has betrayed the Republic and auctioned his soul and conscience.
In 2017, when protesters mock President Trump, they didn't realize they'd been duped by Russian trolls. Fake Russian Facebook accounts called on Americans to protest in real life after the election. In fact, Russian efforts in the U.S. never stopped, but by 2020, they evolved.
I think the difference that we're seeing from disinformation in 2016 coming from Russia and what we're seeing today is that Russia's kind of been forced underground.
Nina Jankowicz is the Wilson Center's Disinformation Fellow. She says Russian tactics have changed, but the strategy remains the same.
The goal is to cause chaos and distrust in the institutions that govern our democracy and, frankly, to cause discord between Americans themselves.
In the last month, the FBI and social media companies exposed 2 Russian disinformation operations that posed as news sites. Peace Data, which disparaged Vice President Biden from the left, and the Newsroom for American and European-based citizens, which fueled right-wing outrage. Both sites hired real, unwitting Americans to try and provide authenticity, and both sites had photos of supposed editors, which weren't real people, but generated by artificial intelligence.
They were trying much harder to be convincing, rather than creating lots and lots of very edgy troll accounts.
Ben Nemo is the investigations editor at Graphica and worked with social media companies to expose the sites. He says both highlighted the election, and NAABC claimed the election would be fraudulent.
Lots of claims of hundreds of thousands of ballots going missing or being trashed or being delivered to the wrong people or people getting multiple ballots.
I think that mail-in voting is a terrible thing.
Last week, Iran did the same, amplifying President Trump. A video sent to Democrats falsely claimed that voter databases had been hacked. The U.S. government says Iranian actors used publicly available data to convince Americans the election's more vulnerable than it really is. Russia has done the same.
Rather than actually getting in our voting systems, they can create the perception that they were in them. That is a way to create an environment of distrust toward the election infrastructure, toward the election certification process.
It's important to keep perspective. In 2016, the Internet Research Agency located in this St. Petersburg building created posts that were shared in the U.S. 31 million times, liked 39 million times, and received 3.5 million comments. Today's efforts reach a fraction of that audience, thanks in part to early detection by intelligence services working with social media companies and researchers.
That change has been one of the most radical shifts to ensure that we're finding these operations earlier and tackling them earlier.
Nathaniel Gleischer is Facebook's head of cybersecurity policy.
These operations are getting caught sooner, they're reaching fewer people, and they're not having the impact and the effect that I'm sure the actors behind them want. We all need to be aware this is happening, but we also need to recognize that it's not as widespread as many people think.
It's much harder for the trolls to get away with the kind of thing they tried in 2016, and that means they have to try harder.
In Europe, Russia's tried forgeries. Russian actors created a fake Senator Marco Rubio tweet and fake BuzzFeed posts in 3 languages to spread the false story Britain spied on President Trump. There was a fake Committee to Protect Journalists letter, a fake Senate on Foreign Relations Committee letter. The fear is those tactics could come to the U.S. if the election is disputed.
Russia is nailing our internal fissures, really manipulating them, amplifying them, whereas the stuff that we see coming from China and Iran is a little bit more bumbling.
And U.S. intelligence officials tell PBS NewsHour Russian actors successfully hacked government and commercial networks in at least 2 states, although the election wasn't their main target. And that brings us to William Evanina, director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center and the Intelligence Community Coordinators to Secure the Election. William Evanina, welcome to the NewsHour. Just yesterday, the FBI announced an imminent cybercrime threat to American hospitals. Cybersecurity firms say it's a ransomware attack that's already hobbled at least 5 medical centers and was launched by Russian actors. Can you tell us who's behind the attack and what's the motivation?
What I can tell you and your viewers is that we have seen a systematic processing of surveillance and penetrations by nation-state threat actors, to include Russia, into our critical infrastructure the last few years. And that critical infrastructure has also been our hospital situations and our research and development, particularly with the onset of COVID and the amount of research and development to a COVID prophylactic to a vaccine. We've seen a lot of our nation-state threat actors, and again, including Russia, make attempts to not only steal that vaccine, but cause chaos in our supply chain to further the vaccine's implementation.
Beyond COVID, just last week, we saw the intelligence community saying that Russian actors have targeted dozens of government and commercial networks that aren't election-related, but they did get access to some voter information. Some of these were successful. How successful were they, and how serious are those attacks?
As we've seen for multiple years, foreign adversaries like Russia, China, and Iran have been surveilling and attempting to penetrate our critical infrastructure across a wide swath of infrastructure, from the economic sector to the hospital sectors to the critical infrastructure and financial systems. Two countries, Russia and Iran, both exfiltrated data from election infrastructure. However, only one of them, I think, as we get through the infrastructure surveillance perspective, some of it might have been by accident, but the fact they took it also drives that wedge of interference and sowing discord and confusion of the capability to do that.
And so just to be clear, how much data have the Russians and Iranians stolen from voters that wasn't already public?
We're still looking at that right now as we speak. We're trying to identify if the data taken by Russia and Iran was also available publicly. But right now, all we know is both nations took voter data registration information from places that were election-related infrastructure. The Russian penetration was part of an overall cyber activity where they're just doing a lot of penetration and surveillance of critical infrastructure.
You mentioned 2016. We've gotten independent reports from the Justice Department, from the Senate Intelligence Committee that have detailed how Russian hackers successfully tapped into the voter registration files in 2 Florida counties, penetrated Illinois' voter registration database, and there were also reports of similar attempts in about half a dozen cases by our count. Why should voters be confident they won't actually use that data this time?
Well, I think the confidence is a really important word, and what we're trying to really drive here is voter confidence, knowing that you should vote and you should vote with confidence. 2 anecdotes of that, Nick, I'll bring back to last week. So in a matter of 24 hours, we had intelligence that we derived overseas of a foreign actor exfiltrating voter data registration and putting it into nefarious action. Within 24 hours, we collected information, we analyzed it, were able to get on the ground in 2 separate counties and drive mitigation with the local authorities to prevent any additional impact to not only the election infrastructure, but to those voter registration files. As of right now, where we sit today, we're very confident that our adversaries will not be able to manipulate any votes or change any votes at scale.
You just mentioned the words "at scale," but some of these states might be very close. Are you concerned perhaps about a small attack that could sway results one way or the other?
The American voter will determine who they're going to vote for when they pull that lever. I think the concern we have is a potential ransomware attack where systems are shut down and we're unable to process votes in a timely fashion. So when I say at scale, I mean literally at scale in the numbers, the dozens. I don't think that's capable. I think our assessments and DHS assessments have been very on point that that's not possible.
You mentioned the announcement last week by your boss, Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, about an Iranian campaign that had a video and emails attached to it. Ratcliffe announced that it was designed to hurt President Trump. You have said, in a statement in the past, that Iranian actors were trying to hurt President Trump, but I was told that night that Ratcliffe's prepared remarks did not make the assessment that that particular campaign was designed to hurt President Trump. Was there an intelligence community assessment that that campaign was designed to hurt the president?
Well, Nick, on that question, I can only comment to the actual effects and impacts of last week with respect to what happened with Iran's intention. The Iranians truly believe that the United States government is trying to enact a regime change. So logically, they are anti this administration. When you get into the semantics of whether they're for President Trump or for Vice President Biden, I think we lose a little bit of the solemnness of the threat. So your question is valid, but I think we have to really keep our eye on the prize that we have nation-state threat actors out there who are doing their darndest to sow discord and really destabilize your democracy any way possible.
You've released 2 major statements over the last few months discussing Russian, Chinese, and Iranian threats. Isn't it Russia that possesses the best capacity and presents the biggest threat for the election itself?
I would confirm that. Yes, I think that I've been very clear about this as a counterintelligence official here in the U.S. that from an election perspective, Russia poses the greatest threat. They have the best tools, capabilities, and intent. Right? Democracy really scares Vladimir Putin and the Russian establishment. That's been known. But I will also say, putting my counterintelligence hat on, the Chinese Communist Party poses the greatest national security risk to our nation.
The Cyber Command with the National Security Agency have launched offensives against foreign actors in the last few months and years. I know you're not able to speak about the specifics, but how successful have those attacks been?
Very successful, and they occur on a regular basis. And what we learned in 2018 is we can be successful defending our democracy and our elections if we incorporate overseas in the battle space.
Are you concerned that foreign actors could try and sow discord and chaos on election night and in the days after the election, especially if it's close?
Absolutely. I think it's important for viewers to understand the ultimate goal of Russia and Iran is to sow discord and to be able to destabilize their democracy. Both those regimes, their biggest kryptonite is democracy. So anything they can do in any manner to destabilize their democracy and continue to sow discord and drive wedges in our society is their ultimate goal.
Bill Evanina, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for the opportunity.